transmissions.
And hello, thank you for joining us today. We have Brittany Eldridge. She's the author of Healing the Light Within Me, My Inner Child, and Chasing Fireflies, as well as host of a radio show similar to what we're doing here called Rise Above. So if you get a chance, check it out. And we'll put a link down in the comments now because I got to get used to this on YouTube. So now that we're on YouTube, I try to put links and stuff down in the comments section or the about section or whatever it is. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I apologize. We were just to our viewers too, because they missed out on a really good conversation. I thought we were recording and we weren't. Technical difficulties, but we were just talking about mental illness and the mental health system in our state specifically, so it doesn't impact everybody. We've got a lot of listeners outside of New Hampshire, but as a whole, I think a lot of people would agree that, at least in the United States, that the mental health system is pretty broken. And yeah, it's really unfortunate from personal experiences with trying to get in there for counseling for my son with grief. And we were just talking about that too, 6 months to get in there. I mean, listeners have heard me talk about this before, for sure. So they kind of have an idea if they've listened, but it's just like that whole thing in New Hampshire, specifically. It's bizarre that, people are struggling so much and they can't get the help they need. And it just turns into, a mess, for the criminal system specifically. Because they end up, like we were saying, getting into substances and using that to self-medicate, and then that becomes just this spiral for them, and it's just it's awful,
Right.
And then we were talking about a friend of mine who, to try to get us back on a track where we were, because you're making a really good point, is that, like, I have a friend who's schizophrenic that's just not properly taking care of the situation, or really, I guess, probably didn't address it early enough, but now he's in his late 20s, early 30s, and he's having major issues with, major breaks for him and on, substances to medicate it. And it's just, obviously things are getting really bad where he's, held up people for money and stuff, like, and just awful situations. I won't go into names, personal information, but he was a close friend for a long time and really did some things that just crossed the line and burned me, hurt specifically. But it just sucks because, you try to help people like that and they don't want to help themselves, and there's not much you can do because, they're going to end up and this is kind of where we're going in the conversation was, in jail, and that's not the place for them.
Right. There's not much support in there as far as like mental health goes. It's, I don't know, like from what I think, someone suffering from like mental illness, they need more tools to kind of work through their issues that are going on internally. And, being in a hospital room, a jail room rather, you're not getting that consistency that you need to work through your issues, the traumas, the anger, the sadness, so it's like, it's sad because you kind of, you've got your mental illness, number one. Now, number two, you're sitting in jail because of your actions. And I think, it's like we were talking about, like the broken system of the mental health. I think that there's sort of an awareness about it, but just not enough awareness. And, I just feel if there was more awareness, more people could gain understanding of themselves dependent on their level of mental illness, the severity, that they could kind of step back and really just take a moment to realize that they can inhabit healthy things to release their anger and sadness out into, to kind of, I don't know, like build themselves
because alternatives. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
I completely agree. Like, I think that, like, the hard thing is like they're not addressing it and they're not approaching it because it's just easier to self-medicate, and they can't, you know, they're like we were talking about earlier, like to get help means you've got to call somebody, and then in most
Right.
circumstances you're calling somebody multiple times, and it's a battle just for them to make the first call. So then it's like substances become a lot of times easier, and that's why I think there's so many people dealing with substance issues. And it's not that, it's not this moral character. Like there's so many, you know, people, and I try to avoid the politicism of it specifically, because I don't think that necessarily helps the situation. But I think that there's so many people that are just so like, well, you just got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get through it. And it's like, those people don't understand what it's like to be in those circumstances. I don't even really understand. I have a rough idea or understanding because of what I've gone through. But yeah, I mean, because of my own personal experiences with, you know, ADHD and you know, grief, loss, and that stuff. And I mean, at the same time, like, you know, there aren't these healthy mechanisms that, and exercise can be one of those things, you know, a huge endorphin release, but also the type of foods and stuff that we, obviously that's not an end all be all. Medications are super important for a lot of people. And like I'm utilizing medications for, you know, ADHD, and I've been back and forth so many times about that. But for me to be an effective parent, especially in this type of society where we have to kind of fit into these boxes and be these people that maybe we weren't, you know, genetically meant to be,
Right.
that, you know, I've got to be organized. I need to make lists, and I need to do all that. And really, you know, the medication I'm on is helping me manage that the best, you know, and it's a balance between, you know, psychostimulant and a mood, um, what's it called? Mood stabilizer.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it's probably more information that people care to know, to hear, but I tend to be pretty open myself
Yeah.
about this stuff because I feel like it decreases the stigma, and anything I can do to help that
Right.
is huge, because that's the problem with it. Most of the time people won't get help because they're afraid to get help, and that's just the worst scenario. Is it
And I think too,
in
like, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Finish
no,
your
no,
thought.
no, no. I was just gonna say, it really, it's just I think the mental health system kind of exacerbates it
Right.
versus trying to get people to get help. They're
Right.
scaring people off.
Right. Well, I think it's too like important that like coming from a man such as yourself, I think a lot of men, I think they can be afraid to come forth and say, hey, you know, I'm really struggling with like anxiety, or I'm really depressed about this, or what have you. So I think, you know, showing the world, you know, coming from your lips, I think it's really inspiring to show that it's okay to say, hey, I'm dealing with this. So I
Y-
think, you know, that's yeah.
It's hard to do. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it just being able to discuss, because I mean, there is that like stigma for men to like, not to be like, woe is men, you know, but at the same time, like there's not a lot of discussions about the stuff that I think men go through, and this expectation that all men are super strong and that they're going to, and it's just, it's not realistic for everybody. And I think that, yeah, being able to talk about it is something that you don't hear a lot of men talk about. And until recently, because of the changes that I think are happening from a society standpoint, I think that, you know, for me personally, I'm trying to kind of break down on any of that cognitive dissonance, just, you know, being truthful with others, being truthful with myself, about myself. It's taken a long time to get where I
Yeah.
am. And it's taken a long time, a lot of me looking inward and having to accept harsh truths about myself, to deal with those things as not necessarily definitions of who I am as a person, but opportunities to change to make myself a better person. Because let's
Right.
face it, most people struggle with those same things too, to a degree, one variations of a degree. But I think that the biggest problem we have is we ignore, we pretend like they aren't there,
Right.
and that just,
Right.
they never get help because you just don't admit it to yourself, whether it's being narcissistic and having those tendencies, or being the opposite and just being so, worried about what everybody thinks about you. Is those two edges of the spectrum, two ends of the spectrum, just become really unhealthy, and then people just lie to themselves about it, or they medicate it away. And I think that just becomes a danger for them and the people that they live around, really. In some circumstances, not everybody, but there can be extreme circumstances that are impacted from it. So, I think that the more people talk about this and the more comfortable they are talking about it, the better. And I'm hoping that that's just going to pave the way, for kids and the next generation of kids to see that it's totally normal to go to counseling and stuff. That is part of the reason why I go and have been going consistently before, everything that in the last year that's been a crazy shit show. But like during, stuff with my relationship with Kayla and everything, like we dealt with our own issues and whatnot, like anybody does, and going to talk to somebody about yourself, but also about those things, having, those different outlets is super important, I think, for people in relationships too. Because if they really have the intention of trying to stay together, like that was something that we didn't do as much as we wanted to, but also we weren't both going individually. And I think that became an issue for us also. But I mean, I was going myself to try to at least introspect some, and then it just became this spiral of, not a spiral, I should say, just this, just opened up this can of worms, with myself, and it wasn't bad. It was for good, for sure. But I'm lucky that I was actually able to kind of have those circumstances to put me in a place to force myself to realize those things, or take into consideration any of those things. But because of that, I think that's given me some opportunities to look at my life from a new viewpoint. Because I think most of the time people are looking at it from their ego standpoint, and that gets in the way of getting any help. Because if you have to open up to somebody, it leaves you vulnerable in multiple ways.
Right. Exactly. And you brought up like a good point, like, when you go to like therapy, like individually versus like couple, I think, each individual person, I call it, has their own like baggage. So like one of my therapists actually put it to me as like, imagine like a tree, and then like imagine all the roots beneath the ground. Like, so you've got a root of trauma, you've got a root of neglect, you've got a root of sadness, you've got a root of something that happened growing up, or something that happened in the family, or something like that. And it's like all these roots, you've got to kind of like, dig up a little bit and start really taking care of it, and start pouring good nutrients into it. Self-care, things that make you happy, or start to learn to love yourself and learn things that you love. And it's kind of like almost too, it's like, a plant needs sun, or some plants need sun, and if you're not giving them the sun, they kind of just wilter. And this past year I was wiltered, and I started kind of it took a hard lesson and a lot of work, but I started kind of doing like this turn, and it didn't happen overnight, and I kind of started my feeling like I was kind of like coming to life again. And and so that was kind of what I hoped. And I've kind of really shocked myself. But
I think that's huge, though. The point that you were just saying about like sometimes things turn, and then it doesn't happen right away. It's time, and you've got to give yourself the space for it to happen, and like not be all or nothing about it. And I think that is something like I personally struggle with. Like, it's not perfect right away. I have to burn the whole place down. Like, it's not perfect right out of the gate. What do you know?
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of it is that like that need to get it all right away. But if you just kind of let things go slowly, it happens. The hard thing is it's not as gratifying as it being, you know, right away, because you don't notice it. Like you don't notice your kid grow up, right? You watch
Right.
them grow up slowly and you can mark things on a wall, but you don't really recognize the change until you go back and look at the picture, just
Mhm.
because you're with them every day. So it's
Exactly.
totally the same thing in that type of memory, I think. Um, and that's the only way I can think of to describe it for me.
Oh, no,
It's
I've
just
looked at,
that's
yeah, go ahead.
that's the only thing I can think of. Like change, that's yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I just look at things over a period of time recently and just I look at who I was and who I am now, and yeah, that's where it becomes apparent.
Well, two, I think, um, you know, I guess like, mental illness kind of like turns your world ugly, like turned my world ugly. I hated almost everyone. I hated the world. It was awful. I treated people badly and everything. And I then started doing a little bit of research on inner child. And I started like, I'm like, wow, that's kind of silly. But then I like thought to myself, I said, I'm gonna go blow some bubbles outside, or I'm gonna go fly a kite. I'm 29 years old, but I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna fly a kite. And when I started like doing things like, because we all have an inner child, and sometimes it can be like our essence can be ripped apart. So if you imagine like a piece of paper with a little girl on it, and actually Amanda and Allie taught me this at a healing group one day, but you rip the piece of paper, so you get bullied. Okay, so you rip the piece of paper, a part of your essence got ripped, or someone passed away, so now another part of my essence got ripped, or and your essence of your inner child just continues getting ripped through life. And it's so when you start to kind of like do things like to kind of bring your inner child out, whether that be blowing bubbles or flying a kite, or just laughing or running around like stupid.
Yeah.
It just kind of like helps bring out that inner child. And it's like another therapist of mine kind of explained it as, I know you've struggled, I know you're sad, I know you felt afraid, but take a picture of yourself as a little girl. And I did. I found a picture of myself as a little girl. And I looked at it and I said, I love you, I'm here for you, and I'm going to help you. And that is like another mechanism to help bring out your inner child within inside yourself, to let yourself know that you're here for it. You're going to do what it takes to get better. And I think that really helped me. And that was kind of like my inspiration of my first, or one of the books that I wrote there, The Healing That Light Within Me, My Inner Child. I actually have a picture of myself in there as a little girl, and just to encourage others to try that mechanism, because it helped me.
See, I think that's a really kind of good thing to point out, and I guess I haven't ever really looked at it that way, because there's a lot of things personally that I've struggled with over last 2 or 3 years specifically, internally, that have been definitely related to my childhood, for sure. Like just stuff that I can kind of peg back to being a younger kid. And I'm sure that kind of happens with everybody, right? Everybody kind of goes through these different traumas and stuff. And that's why it's like, it's so hard for me now being a parent. Like I'm so trying to juggle that, like not being too tough, but not being too soft.
Right.
Because I know everybody's, opinion on tough love, and sorry, but in my opinion, most people's opinion sucks about it. And I don't agree with them, because I feel like, you've got to be tough with the kid, but the kid needs to know that you're there, and that undeniably that you're there to support them, and that they feel safe in that aspect.
Right.
And I feel like that becomes really difficult when they're living in a house that's just super militant, but on the other hand of that, I was on the other side of that. I had a pretty loose childhood growing up. I could do a lot of things at a young age that most kids my age were not able to do. So, and that didn't bode well for me either. So I think it's definitely a balance. And I think that definitely impacts, kind of how things later in life. But specifically when I was younger, I feel like there's these certain things, that these ideals or things that get put in your head about life or the world or people that just stay with you. And then that's how you view it. And it just grows and builds off of that until you're able to break that or change that, or, if it needs to be. I think that's it's almost impossible. You're working backwards, and it's tough because addressing those things forces you to address yourself.
Exactly.
Some people just wait until it's too late, and that sucks.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
Exactly. So I think I don't know, it's just, I'm not saying there's like a perfect parent out there. I feel like we're all gonna like make mistakes, and I kind of feel like what I've gone through personally, I feel in a sense, and this may sound kind of sick, but in a sense, I feel kind of grateful I went through it, because I feel as though that I can use my story to help others recognize, themselves, and use my tools that I've learned to get and to survive through what I've gone through, to maybe possibly help someone else. I don't have a degree in psychology, or, I'm not a therapist, but I just, I feel it's like really impactful when, someone who's actually gone through it, you can get on the same level as somebody else. So I just, that's like, with my own experiences, I don't know. And I feel that like the more you open up, the more people come to you.
Yeah, no, I think that personal experience thing is almost more beneficial than, you're saying, well, I'm not I have a PhD. That none of that really matters. I think a lot of times people are more uncomfortable talking to somebody with, a lab coat, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, they are under the scrutiny of that person versus, this is my experience of what I've gone through, and I'm here to hear your experience. Right. And I think a lot of times when they can relate and they can talk to you, and it becomes that kind of comfortable dynamic, then you can do that. But that's hard to do and hard to find, I think, for a lot of people. And that's the other thing that we didn't really kind of go into early on, is like, just finding someone is hard, but then finding someone who works for you is almost seems impossible, because you've got to deal with all those other hoops first, and then you finally do. And then insurance, it's just like, and then people still should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, come the fuck on. Like that's where people's lack of compassion is it's disturbing, and it's sad. We are just losing our caring and compassion for other people and putting ourselves first too much. And it happens all too often. But you can also, try to be the most virtuous person also, and still have it come back to burn you too. So again, balance, but like, it's just, it sucks because, you see other people going through it and being able to relate to them, I think helps more than where people are going for help. You know what I mean? Talking to somebody going through it like you is more helpful than talking to somebody who knows about it from a book.
Right. No, there is one therapist actually that I still see, and I actually do like phone consult, and it's kind of like ironic how it happened, and I don't know like how many people who are listening today, like what your spiritual nature is, but on a personal aspect of my own spirituality rather, stuff this past year has been happening, and I think, I don't want to say everyone should go through a dark time to kind of awaken their spirituality, but during my dark time, my spirituality started kind of like I don't know, like knocking at my door, like, hey, I'm here, and like stuff, all this kind of stuff just been happening to me. And I happened to join like a Facebook group because I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's robbed me of a lot of my life. And this girl was like, hey, I know of a therapist that could maybe help you. And I was like, okay. And she's in like Canada. So I was like, how is she going to help me? And so she sent me over like an email address. And I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. And I sent the email over, and the guy responded back to me. And funny enough, like he was from McLean Hospital, which is in Boston. And they have like an actual OCD dedicated program. And I reached out to them and I said, listen, like my funds are low. I'm on disability and I have no insurance. How can you help me? And they're like, yeah, I can. We have a charity-based program. And I was like, thank the Lord. Like I was like going through so many things. Like I was on the bathroom floor at my grandmother's house, like because I know bathroom floor, everybody's probably asking. I love being in the bathroom. It's weird, but I've always felt safe in there. And I talk about that in one of my books. But I
Yeah.
was in my grandmother's bathroom, and I was like making all these phone calls, like, can you help me? Can you help me? And they're like, nope, insurance. I'm like, I don't have any. So by the grace of whatever higher being, this therapist, Eric Janicki from McLean Hospital, he volunteered to step up as my therapist, as an OCD anxiety therapist, and he's doing it off of a charity base, which I'm grateful for. And I actually made him cry recently, and not as a bad thing, but he didn't, from where he saw me, basically bedbound, he saw me now writing books and reaching out to others to try and help. So that's why he was like crying. And I never thought I'd make a therapist cry. So I was like, I felt terrible, but I don't know, like he just, people can be so like robbed and consumed with mental illness that it really just keeps you down on the ground. And then it's like you gotta like fight and play tug of war and look at it in its eyes and say, you know what, I'm done with you, like frig off. And like, you can just really I don't know, you can bounce back from it. And that's like the victory. People sometimes give up before they've actually reached the victory. And it's like, I don't know, it's a wonderful thing to really be on the other side of your mental illness. You'll always have it every day, like I do, and struggle every day. But I think that, when you can get to that point of learning how to fight with it and say, you know what, you're not winning today. It truly is a victory. And it's a constant thing that you gotta kind of, play tug of war with, but it's really worth
Absolutely.
it.
Well, and so I think that the huge part of that is like when you're on the other side of it, things obviously uh, look look a little bit different. Obviously, there's more positive everything. But
Right.
I mean, it's huge. It's a huge thing to be able to have that transformation or just have those mechanisms and somebody there in that circumstance to help. Because I mean,
Right.
you are a huge example of that. Like you were talking about writing, and we're on a podcast. That's something you definitely would not have done before. Like you should be so proud of yourself, because that is huge, like leaps and bounds. But I think that should be, I mean, that's the type of inspiration that I think people can connect with. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's inspiring for me just because I knew you then. I knew you've known you for a long time, and I've known what it's been like for you. And like to an extent, obviously you can never really know what
Right.
somebody's going through, but like it's amazing that that you were able to find someone that really has been able to help you. And I think that it makes me have hope that there'll be more circumstances like that. I really hope that in the next couple of years that things are going to improve for the mental health system, because I really it's good to see people on the other side of those things. And I think it is as simple as getting the right help.
Right.
Because I think there's a way out of it for everybody. And I think that a lot of people just think there isn't.
Right.
They feel
Right.
completely hopeless. And knowing people that have gone through that and didn't make it through it, it's awful to see how many people are just giving up entirely, or just using
Right.
substances until they just
Fade out.
can't
Right.
deal with life anymore, until they it's I have a friend specifically that well, actually we were talking about him briefly earlier, that's going through all this stuff and using substances to deal with everything, but it's just exacerbating the problems. And
Mhm.
now that person's going to very likely end up in jail, and it's just the wrong place for a lot of people. And I think that the other side of it is just like, you can have people that are, instead of going to jail and ending up in these worse spirals, people can be getting help and being contributing members to their own lives, society, like their families. Like,
Right.
it's awful that something as simple as being able to talk to somebody is so it's so people can't find it. It's impossible for people to get just somebody to talk to. Like, they don't have to be a psychologist necessarily, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like, just even counselors that accept the insurance
Right.
is hard enough, and then all the other hurdles. But I
Right.
think that the positive thing from this is to see that it can change completely, and
Yeah.
that you can find the right combinations and find that drive. And I think that's part of it, right? Is that also,
Right.
aside from getting somebody to talk to, is like having those things, like playing guitar, or
Right.
writing. I think that those things are, that's what keeps me whole. I mean, obviously my son's the biggest part of that, but playing
Right.
guitar, being a musician, like art, art specifically, I
Inspiring
haven't
him.
done that in so long. Yeah. I want him to see those things, and see me following things I'm passionate about. And
Right.
it was something that, it's always been hard because I don't want it to impact my life financially negatively. But at the same time, I don't want him to see me being driven about what I want to do in life.
Right.
And, passionate about those things.
Yeah, I
Because
kind
I
of
think,
feel. Go ahead. I interrupted
no,
you
no, no.
again.
I just think that a lot of times, like, kids see their parents just crushed by these systems of normalcy, right? There's just lives
Right.
crushed by going to a cubicle every day. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's just a reality for almost everyone in this world. But finding that thing that doesn't crush you, and then being able to make it work, you don't necessarily have to make a ton of money from it, but if you're happy, that's really all that matters.
Right.
Money doesn't bring a whole lot of happiness for a lot of people, and sometimes it makes things worse. So, like, just being
Yeah.
happy, finding your niche, being able to support yourself and being happy in that life is probably the goal of living, I would say. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's,
Well, I was gonna say, like, you mentioned like you inspiring Gavin. I don't have any children, but I have brothers and sisters, and I happen to be the oldest out of all of them. And recently, I was struggling with suicidal ideation, and my husband Jesse brought me up to my grandmom's because my grandma, my nan, uh, she seems to kind of bring me back, I guess, or she has that way. And so Jesse was like, "I'm bringing you to your dance. She's got the magic wand." And I was like, so we went up there, and I happened to be threatening some suicidal ideation to a friend of mine, and cops got called, and they came up and checked on me, and my little brother happened to be there, and I was so embarrassed. I'm like, I really don't want my brother to see me like this. And so the cops came, they talked to me, and they left, and my brother came out and hugged me, and I just cried into his shoulder, my 14-year-old brother. And I was like, why am I doing this? This should be reversed roles in my mind. And I then was like, after I started like coming back, like I'd say this past couple months, writing and, reaching out to people and just kind of trying to spread the positivity to make it like a domino effect. I really started thinking to myself, I don't want to, I don't want to leave an image of my life like this in my siblings' eyes. I want to show them that they can achieve the impossible. And so that's kind of been a motivation of mine, is I just want to like start at the earliest parts of their life that I can, really make an impact on their lives to, show them that you can turn back from the darkest and the hardest times of your life. And that, all these labels too, like, for instance, I suffer with like borderline personality disorder, OCD, PTSD, severe anxiety, major depression, agoraphobia. Like, I deal with a multitude of diagnoses, but I think that, these labels, when I've learned that, oh my gosh, my name is borderline personality disorder. I literally said that one day, my name is OCD, like, because I felt so frustrated. But I think when you can when you get to like a healing part, I guess, of your journey, I think that you can, and hope that you can get to an understanding that these diagnoses are part of you. They're not who you are. They don't define you. But it is what humans use to put to develop a language to understand the behavior that a person is expressing. So, it can be really discouraging when you get to a counseling appointment and they're like, well, you fit the criteria for depression or borderline personality disorder, and you're like, oh wow, like what do I do now? So I think it's just really, really strongly encourage people to kind of not to get so down on yourself like I did, just to kind of like, it's part of me, and just kind of learn to accept it and to forgive yourself and to try and love yourself through it. Because I think, not to be cliche, but you are the person you spend the most time with in life. And,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times, people have their places where they just feel, connected. Like, it made me think of Kayla and like the ocean, being near the ocean, being near water was something that would calm her and make her feel a lot better. And it just, I think that there's just those certain things that people have that ground them, and I think that it takes going out and living life to find those things that ground
Exactly.
you. And so I feel like it can be kind of a just catch 22, for a lot of people, because they can't seem to get to that point because they can't get out,
Exactly.
because they're just crushed by everything. And I think the more open and the more exercises you do in those circumstances, the more you put yourself in uncomfortable circumstances socially and just in life in general, the easier it becomes. Because I've noticed just being in sales, I was in sales for years, over a decade, and talking to people is not an issue for me. And I still do the podcast thing, talk to people, but I've noticed my want to be out in society and be around people and do all those other things has dropped and decreased a lot.
Right.
I really don't feel the want to be out and go hang out with a ton of friends and, go get a beer. You know what I mean? Like, it's been forever since I've, wanted to go out and drink or anything like that, but like specifically just go out and do anything, you know?
Right.
And you don't like, there's even a point where it's just like, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do practice today. Like, I don't even want to leave the house. I just want to stay
Yeah.
here. And I know that it's not healthy for me. There's no reason for me not to do it or anything like that. So those are the days that I force myself
Right.
to go to do it,
Right.
because I like mental health wise, like it's so necessary that I go to practices, because when I don't
Right.
miss a practice and I'm not playing music, it's when things start to get pretty shitty.
Right. And
But I think it just keeps me on schedule too.
right, right. And then, like you were saying, like you don't want to like leave and you gotta force yourself. It's like, you know, I don't know, it's kind of like your brain just becomes so like used to, you kind of like you gotta kind of like retrain yourself. And like it's like, well, that's a lot of work, you know, and but you gotta
Yeah.
retrain yourself, you know what I mean? It's like it's so
Right.
easy just to lay on that couch. I'm telling you, I've
Absolutely.
done it
Yeah.
like almost like daily. But when you kind of like
Right.
get out and you do it, you're like, oh wow, I can do this. And you know, you really surprise yourself. And the more that you do that, the more you realize that you can do this. I mean, there will be always setbacks, like for sure. But
Right.
yeah, it's just, you know,
I feel like um, electronic devices have definitely exacerbated that and made it worse. Like the
mm,
anxiety piece, because of like the
yep,
constant interconnectivity and like the need to constantly be connected all the time, but
right,
also like the depression thing, like when you're down and out and you're on the couch and then you're going through Facebook and you just see all of what is just everybody. The only thing that people show in their lives are the good things. So all you see is just good things in everybody else's life.
yep,
And it's just like, and in
yep,
reality, those devices are, can be used for everything. We don't have to use them
right,
specifically for Facebook or, finding cat memes, but we tend to do that. But the big thing I think is that, these companies are designing the apps to be addictive. They
right,
want daily active users. They don't care about downloads, how many people are using it every day. Um,
right,
and that is just detrimental, because with social media, people are already struggling with that from a mental health standpoint. But then
mm-hmm,
on top of it, add in the whole facet of seeing everybody else's life, being connected, being depressed and being on the couch, and then your phone's in your hand. You don't even have to set up like a laptop, right? You get your phone, you can hang onto it until it slips out of your phone and hits you in the face.
yep,
And but it's there. So then the house is dark, you're in your room, you're on a couch or
yep,
whatever, and you're depressed. And like, how many people am I painting a scenario for that's listening right now? Like,
exactly,
I totally know that all too well. And it's just like, how many people know that all too well?
right,
And these devices and technologies are good to an extent, but we're not finding balance. We're just we're exhausting it, or we're just using it to the point where it's so unhealthy that now 10 to 14-year-old kids are killing themselves 3 times as much as they did 3 years ago.
yep,
That's fast. That's really
mm,
fast. So that's we need to pay attention to that as a society and be like, put the fucking brakes on. But
right,
we don't
right,
move like that. We don't move like that
right,
as a society. It takes fucking 10 years to write a goddamn bill or a law or anything. And
yep,
then their interest when writing that bill is in the makers of GlaxoSmithKline or whoever the
yep,
hell the company is making the drugs, not in our benefit or interest.
yep,
So it becomes this shit show. And I mean, I guess that's why like people in the older episodes heard me so much about like the political thing with like UBI and the universal basic income, because I do think that how many people could get out of their situation if they just had the funds or the resources to do
right,
it? And it becomes a
right,
resource thing. Like $2,000 a month really isn't even that much money nowadays. So if the $1,000 a month is even less than that, like people living off of that, it wouldn't be realistic to live off of $1,000 a month. You'd have to get work, but you'd be able to get to work, you know, you'd be able to get to your job. I mean, I just think you'd be able to get the health insurance that you need, be able to get the mental health that you need to be able to get out of that abusive mudslinging relationship that you're in, whatever it is that you need to get out of. Like $1,000 a month extra makes it a hell of a lot fucking easier to move out of Ohio because a bunch of towns have gone under, you know, because of the pandemic, economic status, whatever it is. But also, how many of those people would be able to be passionate and happy and driven because they can be a baker if they want to. They love baking. That's what they want to do. But there isn't an economy for it, not enough of an economy. But once you start generating money into those small economies so they can be a baker, then people can buy the baked goods and not have to buy it on Amazon or whatever the hell it is. Like people's mental health improves too. You know, who would have thought when you take the economic boot off of somebody's throat, they can breathe again, you know? It's so disheartening to see so many people sinking because of the programs not being there, an economic boot, you know, whether you see it from the people need UBI or help from the government in that aspect, or if you see it from taxation as theft, then there should be no government helping them and there'd be nobody taxing. No matter what direction you see it from, like something's got to change right now because people are dying in the streets as we speak. Maybe not here in New Hampshire yet until it gets really cold because we're, you know, we have a lot more money generating, I think, than some of the other states. We're smaller. Lots of rich people live here half of the year. You know, we do okay, at least for social programs and people. But there are times, and you've seen this, where people in Rochester die in the street in a fucking bus stop because they freeze to death. Like, what the hell? Like that, it shouldn't happen when you have somebody like Jeff Bezos make $14 billion in a day in a pandemic. Like, I'm not against him making that kind of money, but if he's making that kind of money, businesses are making that kind of money, we can afford to also take care of the guy sleeping in a dumpster to stay warm because the trash, you know, came from a kitchen. Like, I've heard of people sleeping in a dumpster with wet garbage because it's warm, because it's shit that got thrown away from a kitchen. Like, that's sorry about my language.
I think we need to like redefine what humanity is, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Like, and that's why I was just like, sure, capitalism, right? I'm not like pro-socialism. And I understand where a lot of the like the Trumpsters are coming from and stuff. Like, I get that. Capitalism's great. But capitalism that doesn't start at zero is even better. You know what I mean? Sure, you have an economy to be a baker and do whatever you want in it, but you'd be able to do that free market capitalism thing even better if you could have the resources to actually make that bakery first. And at $7.25 an hour ain't gonna happen if you're starting from the bottom. Like, anybody in a McDonald's job could start a bakery with that money, $1,000 a month. You can put money away for 5 years. You can get a loan. You do a lot. So I just think that, like, hopefully this pandemic has shown how bad our health and mental health system is so broken, because it's exacerbated all those health things. How many people are dying right now? Suicides have increased exponentially. Like, I was talking about kids. We don't even want to go into the impact that it's had with kids and screen time, and then them killing themselves at home because they broke the screen because they're upset about Fortnite and they're at home and not with their friends. And like, it's just this awful devolving situation. And then you have their parents in the other room stressed out because they're not gonna be able to pay for rent because they lost their job because it's a major fucking pandemic. So it's like, and then meanwhile, you've got Democrats or Republicans arguing about who's gonna have the bill go through or whatever it is that they fucking argue about while making laws. Like, and people are dying in the streets. The Nancy Pelosi is going to hold up this shit. And then you've got the other people on the other side just dragging their feet while people die. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, people are fucking dying.
Right.
And you can easily blame the Democrats as much as anybody in the Republicans. I definitely think that they are equally at fault in a lot of ways. And again, not to get political, but God damn it, it
Yeah.
ties into it. And people are dying
Right.
now. They can't pay their rent. And now there's kids, like I think about kids my son's age having to go through that. And it's fucking horrible. It's just horrific and awful. And I'm
And
glad that we're in the place that we're at. We can support ourselves. But I think about all the people who can't.
right.
It's
It's
fucking crushing.
And another thing too, like when you were mentioning about like people like, you know, working at McDonald's, but they really want to be like in a they want to like open up their own bakery or something because like, maybe that's their purpose in life or something. I think like I posted something, social media, but Facebook, we were talking, like I posted something about, some things that like cause like depression, anxiety, and that's like kind of like the lack of meaning that you feel in your life. And, I think it just all interplays like into the world. And like you got politics, you've got finances, you've got your own mental health, and I just feel like it all kind of just interplays into each other. Um and it's like if we could just kind of like, I know it's not like a snap of a finger, but I think like if we can kind of like start like correcting some of these things, like I just feel that overall people would have like a better mental health, and be able to make it a better place so that someone's not going down the road like shooting up people because they think people are after them, or I just it's
Yeah.
yeah.
How many things like that happen because there just aren't the resources and that person just ends up in a
Right.
really fucked up place and then kills a bunch of people. And it could have
Right.
been avoided had that person
Right.
got the help that they needed.
Right.
And something is a little bit of resources or whatever, because there's so much shit that's generated in these money wasting programs. Like I've talked about this before, like on the show, is that like I have to jump through hoops every like 4 to 6 months, I think it is, to get, help and assistance. Being on SSI, obviously you get
Right.
disability indefinitely,
Right.
until you can either work or you die. But
Right.
getting food stamps and all that stuff, anything, help from the system, health insurance and all that stuff, you got to be on top of that. And if you aren't,
Yeah.
you don't want to make the calls and you don't want to do that, then you just slip behind. For somebody
Exactly.
who has social anxiety and can't talk on the phone, they're
Exactly.
not going to be able to do that. And then of course there's
Exactly.
people on the other end, and this is what pisses me off about, a lot of people that are super like, I guess in a lot of ways like conservative about the health system, is that they just don't care. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps isn't an option for some people, and they don't understand that. They're just, well, I had to. Well, fuck what you had to do. Other people are gonna
Right.
die because they're not you. Like they
Right.
don't have the ability. Like some people are born without a leg. Are
Right.
they gonna pull themselves up by one bootstrap? Like what the fuck? Like there are people are born differently. We are all different human beings. We all have to deal with different hurdles. Some of us are on the spectrum. Some of us have ADHD. Some of us struggle from depression. Some of us are born without a limb. Like there's just, we're all different. And like the fact
Right.
that people treat it as like, if you don't have it, like people look at me and I use a cane or two. I'm supposed to be using two. Oh, don't tell my doctor.
I think somewhere.
But I use the Canadian crutch at least one all the time. I probably have way better posture if I was doing what I was supposed to, but I use that. People know, they could see it. And it's like, there's that level of sympathy that kind of is embarrassing to an extent for me or for anybody that walks around. They're just kind of like, oh God, that's awful. That's gotta suck. What's wrong? And, or that like, kind of thing. But they can see that and they have that sympathy because they can see it. But for
Right.
something they can't see, they're
Right.
not gonna know.
Right.
Somebody who has Tourette's, that's like fucking ticking and screaming and fucking swearing in the store. People are like, oh, why won't they get him out of here? I've seen people react like that to people, like seeing it in person at a store. This woman, to this Down syndrome kid, one time I was in a market basket, and I feel bad kind of now, because I definitely lost my temper with this woman. She saw this kid, he dropped like a can and it fell on the floor or whatever, and he just was in his own world, like didn't pay attention to it. And rightfully so, I've done that before and it's happened, but he was also struggling with you know, some sort of spectrum disability, and he hit the ground, and she is just like, well, when something hits the floor, we pick things up after ourselves or something. Like, this is just bitchy tone. And I'm just like, the fuck is wrong with you, woman? Like you can fucking pick it up. I said something like that to her. I just like snapped at her, and like I couldn't help it. It's just like the complete inept, just bitchiness. Just, it really made me upset. You know, it's just like, this person obviously didn't know and isn't like just being careless. You can see that. Like, you can see that. And unless there's a cognitive break for her and I didn't recognize it, and then I'm just as guilty and I feel bad. But yeah, it didn't seem like that. It seemed like she just had a chip on her shoulder and she wanted to be an asshole. And it's just like, you can't see what somebody else is going through, but they're going through it. And that whole scenario is just one of many that I've personally experienced, and I imagine happen all over, you know. And it's bad enough with an ankle disability. When I was selling stuff at Barron's, somebody come, what's with the leg? It's like, what's with your fucking attitude, pal? Like, what the hell? Like, what's with the leg? Like, what's with your life, dude? Screw off. Like, how can I help you today? Like, now I've got to help him with his appliance needs, and I am less than enthusiastic about it. Who would have thought? You know, like, the sheer lack of like empathy is just, it's jarring.
Yeah,
it really is. It's just awful. And so that random acts of kindness thing goes a long way right now. Like, was that like Oprah in the 90s doing that, right? But nobody does it anymore. Like, people, she should bring that back. She still has a show. Like, now we need it more than ever, right? She's still on TV. She's got to be on TV. She's like, but seriously, we need that now more than ever. People are like at each other's throats. Like, it's horrible. Even in this, there'll probably something in the comment section, because I brought up politics once. Like, it's bananas. And like, I hope that, you know, people just, now things are over. People are just going to be more nice to each other for a little while, and just kind of go back to, we've got to live together, and we're all going to think differently and act differently and be different people. So at the same time, the super woke activist people need to kind of like dial it back on the canceling everybody because they don't think or act or feel the same way you do. Or maybe they just don't know that you want to be identified as a they. Like, they didn't mean to. Give them a break, you know? Like, I feel like there's empathy all the way around. It comes from everybody, and there needs to be more of that. Needs to be more.
And I think too, like, you start to like feel better about yourself too. Like, I've been a really mean person in many times in my life, but you know, but I think too, like, when you start to kind of, I don't know, when you start to be kinder to people and start to, you know, it makes you feel good too. And then I think that can be like an impact on your mental health wise, is like,
absolutely,
wow, I really helped somebody, you know, and then you realize, like, you know, it starts to make your heart, or I think personally, it starts to make your heart kind of grow bigger. Like, you know, makes me feel good about myself, and, you know.
I agree. I've been trying really, really hard to, like, this specifically started with Facebook, was try to just ignore things and just not assume somebody's negative right out of the gate, because we never know what the other person on the other end of that text is saying. Like, text doesn't show those things, sarcasm and all that. So like, but also just like, you don't have to be negative to somebody because they're negative to you. Like
Right.
it worked in sales, it can work in real life. Kill them with kindness. They fucking hated that. Somebody comes in, idiot. Like, who? What? Who's an idiot? Like, oh, me? You want my help? Hi, how can I help you today? Really, really nice to them. You know, just rub it off. You can't control what other people do. I
No.
spilled cannabis on myself. You can't control what other people do. Like, you can be nice to other people even if they're mean to you. You can be
Right.
kind to others even when you're having a shitty day. And what do you know? Your day improves when you're more positive.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not always easy when you're struggling with your own personal stuff to see those things and see the light of those things because you're struggling with your own stuff. And it's that thing that, like, it's okay for people to be in that circumstance as long as they can see it and know that where they want to be is out of it, you know.
Right.
And I think that you know, you're a perfect example of somebody who's been on both ends of that spectrum and knows what it's like to travel through just being miserably unhappy and
Mhm.
being in a place where you're writing and a guest on a podcast, like, and you're comfortable with talking about the struggles that you've gone through. The more people are comfortable with that, and the more people like you start doing stuff like this, the more
Right.
people will know that it's okay that they can do it too.
Right.
We had a guest a while back that needed that, you know, struggle with some sensory stuff, and during the episode was utilizing, I think it was Velcro or something that was helping her, kind of like a fidget thing, which my
Right.
son uses, so I kind of knew when it was going into it. And then we got on the discussion of like weighted blankets and stuff, which Gavin has been exponentially helpful for him if he's really struggling with something or having a
Right.
major like breakdown or something. It's huge. But
Yeah.
I remember talking to her about that, and just being open and being able to talk about that stuff more often and destigmatizing it. And this is why, I mean, I think there should be a mental health professional in the White House, right? Not
Right.
because the current state of things are just bananas, but because it would destigmatize, like the whole country would see, even the president of the United States talks to somebody because it's normal to talk to
Right.
somebody.
Right.
That reason, not because I'm like politically against Donald Trump, but because we have an almost 80-year-old man now going into that position that Donald Trump is vacating. Joe Biden's like 78 years old. He has some cognitive decline that's obvious, you
Right.
know.
Right.
As time goes on, we need to make sure that those people are capable of handling those things. So having, you know, somebody there to make sure that they're not going off the rocker, you know, that they haven't all of a sudden slipped into some crazy mania and they're going to set off a nuke. Like, who knows, you know,
Right.
not
Right.
just, and not any specific president, but any president, you know,
Right.
because what one
Right.
president does, any president can do, you know, and that's why I think that, like, having that as a normalcy kind of thing, I think would be a huge step for the administration coming into the White House. And I hope
Right.
that they do, because I know there's been talks about that stuff, but I hope that there are some of those changes, because I think that that's something that needs to happen, you know, nationwide, worldwide, but nationwide too,
Right.
because we can be a model for the rest of the world, right? We're supposed to be America. We're
Right.
supposed to have fought the world wars and been that great nation that stands up to all of the world's evils like fascism and climate change and all that stuff. It's our
Right.
place, even though we're not the heaviest global polluter, it's our place to step in and tell everybody they can't pollute. I don't
Right.
disagree. We need to save the planet, you know. Well, I disagree with being able to tell everybody what to do, but I think that, you know, modeling that behavior versus forcing somebody also works. So
Right.
being
Because you
that
never
role
know who's
model,
watching you. You never know
that's
who's
right.
watching. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I completely
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that with your kids or with society in general, like, you never know who's paying attention. Yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think about this often uh, because a lot of people are closer than they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
Matt and I were so very different politically. Like, we argue and stuff, but I loved him more than anything in the world. He was my best friend. And there's so many people that are divided right now that none of that shit matters. At the end of the day, we live here for a short period of time. What we believe and what we feel, we all have to find a common ground to agree on, but we're not going to do that arguing. And he really understood that. And we both had that, like, that thing that no matter what, like, we could always kind of get through it and laugh it off or whatever. And I feel like so many people have given up on that. And it's so disheartening because that's not how things are. Like, we're not that country. We're not those people. We're not that species. Like, we are better than this as a species. We can rise above where we are. And I think that, yeah, I think that we are just hitting a wall a lot of times, but man, we can break through it. And I feel like I've experienced that so many times. Like, I've had more people in my life die, than I really care to admit. I've started more bands than I care to admit. Like, lost jobs. It just is so many things you got to go through, and it's just life. But no matter what it is, like, it could always probably be a little bit worse, and not to like live off of that, because that's kind of a negative connotation, I guess, to have hovering over everything. But things can always be better is the way to look at it. You always have room to get things better and be happier and improve things in your life and become more at one with yourself, and what you want, what you're driving for in life. Like, so many people out there that are just kind of giving up, and there's no reason to. Like, you literally, like, say, all right, say you do want to die, say you want to kill yourself. Why not play it risky and go, like, be a fisherman halfway across the world in one of the world's most dangerous jobs, and you might die. Whatever. It's better than killing yourself. At least then you're doing something completely new. And who knows, maybe you'll find yourself in that job or a new life, or there's so many things and other options other than death. You know what I mean? And I know that's easier said, obviously, than what people are going through. So I don't want people to think I'm discounting, if you're listening to this right now and you're just like, oh yeah, it's easier said than being in my situation, because I know, or maybe I don't know, but I know that a lot of times it's not easy to know what somebody else is feeling on the inside or going through. So I'm sure I don't know, but there's always another option or a alternative. There's always something. There's a whole universe out there. Literally, they're gonna start flying people to fucking Mars soon. $200,000 less than a mortgage to a house, and you can skip out on that loan because they're gonna come to Mars to get that money from you. Like, I'm going to Mars, and I swear I'll pay it back. Just need a loan to get to Mars. I'll wire it. Like, I definitely think that, like, there's so many better things that people can find and be happy about in life. And it just because you haven't found it yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist,
Exactly.
And that's the thing. Like, people are like, I have no hobbies, I have no things I'm passionate about. You probably do, you just haven't found it yet. That's my thing, is that there is a world of things and possibilities out there, but it's randomness, right? The possibility of you finding exactly what fits you may not link right up, especially if you're working in some cubicle in Paducah, Kentucky or something. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like chipping away at your life there, and you never knew that what you really wanted to do was, throw paint at walls while being naked. I don't know. People are crazy out there. There's all kinds of callings in life. Find yours instead of, work in the cubicle until you decide to give up, like there's just so many things I could think of that are better than that, or not better, but different. So yeah, I mean, I just think that there's hope. There's always hope, no matter how bad things are, even if only to, be an opiate for the masses, so to speak, to quell ourselves, to make ourselves, to what's the word I'm looking for? Pacify ourselves, to get through whatever we're going through. Man, hope's a hell of a lot better than being hopelessness and finding hopelessness. But I've always found that no matter how bad things get, I have hope, and I always manage to find my way through it.
Right.
And I feel like it's because of that unwillingness to give up on that positivity, even when things are really
Right.
bad. And at the same time, I feel like there's something kind of broken in my head that I just don't hit that depressed bottom that other people go
Right.
through exactly the same way.
Yeah.
For me, it's usually, it erupts in big failures. Those are my moments. Is like I try so hard and I do everything. I get up to this point and then it, usually goes through and it goes great. But then there are times when it obviously doesn't, and that's usually where things just get really bad and I'm depressed or whatever for however long it is.
Right.
But there's always kind of a way out, at least. And I think
There is.
that
And go ahead.
no, I feel like that people aren't looking at it that way. They're just seeing that it's like they're not even factoring in the whole probability of numbers thing. I'm just looking at it from a probability standpoint. The possibility
Right.
of you even existing as a person on this planet is so small and infinitesimal. The chances of you also finding the thing that sets you on fire in life may also be equally difficult. So yeah, that's all I was gonna say.
No, that you've got a point there. And I was gonna say, you mentioned the way out. So in my book Chasing Fireflies, I actually have a chapter called The Way Out. And Chasing Fireflies is a fiction book. It's my other book is like more like a memoir of stuff that's exactly like actually happened to me. But Chasing Fireflies is a metaphor. Like I use a lot of metaphors, and it's to kind of explain like what I feel like life has been for me. But I used like other people to kind of like in my story to kind of play that out for me. And one of the last title actually in Chasing Fireflies is The Way Out. And it's funny you mentioned that. So like I just kind of structure the book and then to the point of the way out. And so it's just amazing that you brought up that point because some people don't really see a way out, and they can get caught up in the tornado of it. And it's sad, but
Yeah.
you know
No, you're right. I mean, that becomes their way out. Is the only other way out that they can see is to end their life, and that there are so many other ways out, right? There are so many
right.
other ways that you can find, and it's not. There's some of them are too much of a hill to climb initially, but if
Mhm.
you can do things in small amounts, it's hard to see in front of
Right.
you, but
Mm-hmm.
you can get there. Like we were talking about earlier, that things happen over a period of time. You're not going to see it,
Right.
but incrementally you will get there. And then when you look back, it's easier to see it. Um,
Right.
so you have to remind yourself that I feel like that's something that people aren't able to really think of or wrap their head around or even remind themselves of. Even me knowing it, reminding myself of the fact that we grow like our kids grow, right? That over a period of time, you can mark it off on the wall, but you're not going to see it until you look back at all those marks. And yeah, there was a lot of selfish parts of me when I first, met Kayla and stuff. I was wrapped up in the band and I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I wasn't at all ready to have a kid, and I just, like nobody's ever really ready, I think, no matter how much you prepare yourself. But I was extra especially not ready and irresponsible at that age. And, I wasn't honest with myself about a lot of things, made a lot of bad choices. Uh, but being able to learn from them and being able to change those things accordingly, um, I shouldn't say accordingly because it's been rocky as shit. It's been crazy, awful, and I've been bad at it. But I'm getting there, and that's the thing I try to look at is that like where I was then and who I am now are very, very different people. Right down to my grammar and emails sent, professionalism of spelling and all that. Like a lot changed before I met her, and in between then and now. And I mean, I definitely think that she's probably one of the biggest facets of that, and why I am a better person, because she forced me to, be upfront and honest with myself, even when I couldn't be, that person that I was, seeing the growth has not been there. Like every step of the way, even now, like I'm just like, like I didn't do enough today. I'm like, I actually did like 7 things this morning. Like that feeling, like get up every day, I try to make my bed and all that stuff. Like little things add up, but still I'm like, I didn't do enough. I didn't, I'm always obsessed with getting through the next thing, to get through the next thing, to get through the next thing. And what do you know? There's a never ending list of things. So no matter what you do, there's always going to be something else. You're not going to be satisfied. You've got to learn to live in the moment, be happy in the moment. And that is not my, not my specialty at all. At fucking all. Like I am so totally like impatient, and I want whatever I want now. And like, I'm impulsive in that aspect. Like I make decisions based on impulsivity a lot of times. And that's been such a negative for me. Definitely a big part of the ADHD, but, yeah, being able to step back and look at those things, and even that made a lot of huge changes. But it's taken for me to look at the shitty, not good, decisions I made in the past, and being honest with myself about it.
Right.
That's the bigger part of it. Ugh, that's the worst thing in the world, to have to confront things about yourself and accept it as a reality, and then forgive yourself on top of everything else. You got to cognitively, like so many people are cognitively dissonant, right? They can't at all,
Right.
Can you hear me still?
I can still hear you. Yeah.
My battery, the camera kicked out on me. Hold on one second. I'm going to change the battery on the camera.
Yeah, no problem.
Technical difficulties. I had to do this once before. I had to put a little picture of a puppy with his with the cord cut out.
Oh,
It's really funny. Technical difficulties. It's like
apparently your camera needed a break.
it did. It didn't like the time that I wanted it to run for, apparently. I guess I didn't have the long battery in. I thought I did. Nope. Whoopsie. All the professionalism over here at Abstract Transmissions. Uh-oh. Oh no.
There you go. I see you.
Yeah. Ha ha ha. Oh, I'm not even going to edit that out for the people out. I'm just going to leave that all in there. Because, well, there we go. I got them back. All right. I got the screen back. You can see things. But yeah, I mean, I think that given some time and exposure to the, I guess everybody kind of being open about mental health and stuff is going to slowly change things. And hopefully that, combined with the mental health system changing, I mean, this is a fingers crossed, like, let's hope, because God knows the health system is going to improve overnight, but hopefully some other things will improve in the next, couple of years or so. I'm hoping that just wherever, no matter where you stand politically, that the duopolis pendulum will swing from the political right to the political left, like it always does every 8 to 4 years. And with that comes change. So hopefully with that change comes a break in the mental health system. I hope. I really, things are bad right now, and they got worse. And I'm just hoping that things will start to get better, because there's just, right now is the worst time to not have mental health. There's too many people that are shut off from their friends, their family, hiding inside because it's a major pandemic. People are dying. And And then you've got the other people that are like denying that there's a pandemic because they're in denial of their lives being shut down and changed because it's something that's out of control. I think that that's more it. The people denying stuff out there, it's not so much that they can't accept it and their liberties are being taken away. It's that they don't like that they have to adapt their life and that they can't cognitively accept it. And so, you know, and then there's the people out there that just genuinely, you know, don't believe it. And that's kind of crazy to me, but it is what it is. But people are definitely dying out there, and it's going to get worse in the next couple of months. And I'm so worried about that. There's going to be so many people without places to live, and it's just like they're not even like scrambling to figure it out either. It's like, oh well, now that there's a new election, we'll figure it out after the election. Because it's like, what? Like people, you gave them $1,200 like months ago, once. Like, what are people gonna? What? No, this is terrible. This is terrible news.
Yeah.
Soft.
I don't know.
So I hope that you know, with you know, the beginning of the new year comes some changes. 2020 was a shit show. And everybody keeps saying, like, I don't know how this year could be any worse, right? Like 2019, 2016. Like, I remember each year it's like, oh my God, we lost so many celebrities this year, whatever the hell it is. Like, this was obviously worse. This was terrible. This is a terrible year. We cannot have another year like this next year. So hopefully things get better and, you know, we don't have like this major existential crisis because the flu changes, you know, into gremlins or something crazy.
Yeah, that's
aliens. Who knows? Seriously, at this point, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, the aliens thing already kind of happened this year, right? They had that major. Can't get through an episode of Abstract Transmissions without me bringing up aliens. I did it again. Haven't brought up appliances yet, so that's good. Oh, so yeah, that kind of blew my mind. Like, I mean, look, so I believe that it's very likely that we could be visited from creatures from another planet, possibly. I mean, I guess I'm less likely believing that they could visit us and more likely that they could exist entirely.
Yeah.
You know, that seems viable, realistic, possible. But with the stuff that the UFO, the CIA and the Pentagon and everybody released about on CNN and like Fox News and everything about basically UFOs exist, not necessarily aliens, but like unidentified flying objects in the absolute specific sense. You know, they don't know what it is. It's flying. It's an object.
Right.
Unidentified aerial phenomena is what they're calling it now. UAP. UAP, I think. Yeah, it's a mouthful. But they've got like some of the oddest like documents on this. And this is from the government, like saying that this is a real deal. We chase these things down. We have no idea what they are. They move faster than physics allow through air. It's just impossible, basically. They're, you know, completely disappearing or disappearing, you know, or hiding themselves, cloaking themselves, something, and they don't know what it is.
Right.
They're not one said it's aliens, but it's either us from the future or aliens. It's those two things, in my opinion, are like the only thing that interdimensional creatures slash aliens or us from the future.
Wow.
Or it's a simulation.
Might find out someday.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, thought this might have been the year for it. I hope not. Like, geez, that's all we need is another jarring thing to happen for us this year. Like, it's not bad enough. We had a worldwide pandemic. We got to do the aliens thing too, huh? All right, strap ourselves in. But I am not ready for this winter. I really am super worried that there's just going to be a nasty winter. I'm hoping that they just figure this out because I feel like there's just with the eviction thing, there's so many people getting evicted, and it's like, what do you do in that scenario? It's already bad enough as it is in places like California and stuff. I can't imagine those majorly populated areas.
Right.
And then
Right.
it's just gonna, spill over into the suburbs and rural areas, and people
Right.
are gonna be in rough spots all across America, and regardless of where they were. I think there's probably plenty of people who've been impacted by stock market, completely doing nosedives.
Right.
Ooh. But yeah, I
just
mean,
that stock market stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I,
And
I, I don't really follow it very often because I think I have some stock, but I just haven't. I should look at that now, see if it's done anything. It's like $20 worth of stocks, probably. I have no idea.
oh god.
You're saying Jesse has stocks? Did you say?
Yeah, he's into that stock market stuff. He's got a couple different ones he's following, and like it fluctuates, and um, you know, he could cash out right now and walk away with a lump sum of money or something, but then it's like kind of like I've never played that game. Was it Russian roulette or something like that?
Yeah.
That almost like playing that, I would say, with the stock market, but I never
Yeah. I
got
mean,
into it.
I think it is kind of like gambling, right? Because you can lose it all.
Yeah.
Depending on how much you put into it. Like I've only put so much in there. So if it keeps on going up or gets, up in there or whatever, and and it drops again. I didn't put much in, so I didn't really. It went up and then it dropped back down again, so it didn't impact me as much. But if you make a lot of investments and then it goes south on you, yeah, I mean it's tough because it is totally random. And at the same time, if you can read things a certain way and kind of predict how things are going to go,
Right.
but I think a lot of people thought that Trump was going to win, and that definitely impacts the stock market for sure. So I think there's a lot of people that unexpectedly had some of that happen this past couple of days too. So see what the stock market continues to do, because I'm optimistic. I think things can turn around with the economy and stuff. But we definitely need to inject cash into the country like fast.
Mm-hmm.
They're already been printing cash for like ever. At this point, it's all fictitious money. We have really not a whole lot of we're not on the gold standard. Like we're going off fake money for a long time, and it hasn't created a bubble that bursted yet. I think it could potentially do that if we ever got way out of hand. But things are so different now with digital currency and numbers in a computer. Like it's all changed so much that I don't think inflation is quite the same anymore. And I think that we can definitely turn things around and not just like slowly spiral into a depression. But UBI is almost necessary at this point. That normal stimulus, like on a normal basis, $2,000 a month until the pandemic's over, sounds about right for families, because people out there that are just suffering and that have no place to live, and it's a terrible situation. But that'll also inject money into the economy. Americans love to spend money on useless shit, so Amazon's going to make even more money.
Yeah, that's where you should invest your stock, right? Amazon.
Yeah. Could you imagine, like, if you invested stock back in 97 when people were telling you to do it then? Because like, this Amazon.com is going to be a thing. Yeah, it really was going to be a thing for sure. Now, dude, those stocks, you could buy probably $100, you'd be billionaire now. That's just insane. $100 in stocks make you just ridiculously rich for forever. Yeah, it's crazy. On that note, I hope I win the lottery soon. No, I'm just kidding. I don't play the lottery, so I'm probably not going to win it. But it should just randomly, you know. I
Yeah,
just tell
you just
people,
never know.
don't gamble until it's a really bad day.
Yeah, right.
Your
Right.
luck's really bad. You know, it can only go up, you know. And I've actually, I can say I've had some good luck with that. A few times I've run scratch tickets. It's been when I'm having a really shitty day, like $20 scratchers. I shouldn't be spending $20 in that circumstance, but it worked out almost every time. So, hey, I wonder if that's anybody else ever run into that. We have a comment section down below. So if listeners out there, you've had that happen, comment away because we have one of those now because we're on YouTube.
Oh, God.
Unless you're listening to it on Apple and then you just don't get a comment section. Actually, I think there is a comment section. That was the one I was checking out. People are really angry about
Oh,
something
no.
we were talking about. Yeah, I don't know. I'll pay attention
I
really.
can't even see it. I can't even see the comment section obviously until after, probably.
Yeah. But I mean, well, it's one of those things that like it takes a super long time to upload this onto YouTube because of the
Bandwidth.
I don't know, and maybe it's the definition that I'm uploading it in. Maybe if I brought it down to a different definition that I'm uploading it would be different. But
Yeah, because there's
I
like
think
720 versus like 480, right? Like 480,
yeah,
720.
480,
Yeah.
720, and then they go up to like 1080 and like these new 4K high resolution, which
Yeah.
nothing. Even with the DSLR camera that I'm using for the webcam, I am not using it like any type of really extreme resolution when I upload. Well, I try not to at least. Maybe it's still, I don't know, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Actually, it's very likely that I don't know what I'm doing.
Well,
Gotta love
you learn.
that part of this now, you know. It was fine when it was
Yeah.
audio, but yeah, video just had to make it real nice and complicated. And then I got a camera that had like a webcam like software that you could get after, but it was like a beta software, so they're still trying it out. So it's Canon and it's good. I mean, the camera's great and it works. Obviously, we're using it now, but yeah, it took a little while for me to figure out why it wasn't working. And it turns out you just have to constantly keep anything that's Apple updated all the time. If it's Apple, it's got to be updated constantly, or else you run into constant issues. I'm pretty sure that's what happened earlier. I reset it and it fixed the problem.
Right.
Fingers crossed. But you know, I think that it's really great that kind of circle back to what we were talking about before, that you are able to be a really good example of somebody who's been able to go from not being able to manage a lot of you know I guess I would say like social interactions and stuff to being able to go far beyond that and be able to, I mean, write books and everything. Like it's just a huge difference. And I think that you are a really, really, really great inspiration for people that are struggling with that. And seeing Kayla go through social anxiety to the extent that it really impacted every facet of her life, every single facet. That people don't understand that, and the people that do understand that don't know what it's like to hear from somebody who has been on both sides of it, but also isn't like, well, I did it, so you can do it too. Is more like, this is what I went through, and I know what it's like, and these are all the things that I found out about myself. So I'm hoping this will help you too. That's a completely different animal than I did it and you should be able to, you know? And I think that attitude that you have about it is just different, and it's different in a lot of positive ways that I think are going to change people's outlook. I think that's huge. Mainly because things like these mediums exist, podcasts exist. You're not limited to, well, can you make it on the Jimmy Kimmel show? Like you can be seen by everybody and anybody because the world is filled with people watching content just like this, or listening to content just like this, because people want to hear from people like us more so than some you know, robotic bullet point question interview with some actor. You know what I mean? People
Right.
really want real life. That's why people went towards reality TV. People like seeing other people living real life, you know?
Right.
And I think that just living life is even better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly.
being able to see you in that circumstance, I think really kind of opens a whole ideal of thought. So, I mean, it's good to see that you know you're doing the radio thing and like that whole medium. More and more people can go on to check it out, and really, I think there's more and more podcasts and radio shows that are doing that, but
Right.
to really broaden that arm of like the podcast spectrum, like people talking about mental health more and more, and being able to say, this is my experience, and now I'm on the other side. There is a way through it, even when it seems like there isn't.
Right.
And now I'm able to tell you about it through this medium. I think is inspiring to those people because they can see that, you know, and it seems like there's a hope. And I think that's kind of what I'm living on right now is hope. I think a lot of people across the country are living on hope right now. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and I've kept you here a really long time, so I really appreciate that. On that note, we'll leave there on hope, because I think that, you know, in any time that there's, you know, a podcast. Oh, my kid's home too, so perfect timing. Anytime, you know, anytime, you know, on the podcast, I try to really kind of like circle back to at least something, and hope is that thing that I think a lot of us are hanging on right now. So
Right.
for those people out
Right.
there, we're in the same boat and you're not alone. And there's definitely hope. So appreciate everyone listening out there today. And as always, abstract here, abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.